Hello, Andrew.
Robbie, it's great to see you.
Good to see you too. It's been quite a while,
It has.
and it's just so nice that we're able to do this today and talk about your upcoming program at Drala Mountain Center. So I have questions,
Far
but
away. Far away.
yeah,
Lots
I
for you to do.
mean, unless you have anything you'd like to share first in this moment.
No, I'm just excited to offer this program. I think in this day and age where there's so much anxiety, duress, and whatnot, sometimes a topic like Pure Lands could seem like the farthest away from what we really need. So part of my charter in offering this course is to kind of, I could say, culturally translate Pure Land teachings into the modern age so we understand their applicability, their practicality, and how they can really help us. Because really, a lot of it has to do with purity principle. What does that really mean? And right off the bat, in a way that we'll explore quite a bit, because the most important thing in this program are the different contemplations, the exercises, the practices where we can bring this stuff directly into our life. And one of the most immediate ways is working with purifying our relationship to unwanted experience. So that right off the bat is like, whoa, I really
That's a
thought,
lot right there. So,
yeah,
so
yeah.
Andrew, what exactly are Pure Lands?
Yeah, well, so in terms of there's two ways to look at it, and we'll be exploring both. So the kind of the sutra level, which is more exoteric, over the counter, and then the tantra level, which is a little bit more esoteric, you could say prescription strength. And so sutra level Pure Lands, by the way, this is the largest school of Buddhism in the world. There's over 100 million practitioners, and so the Pure Lands. First of all, they're just as real, or I like to say unreal, as this. So we think, oh, they're just some like metaphor, archetype. You can look at them that way for sure, but in terms of like their reality, their ontology, using geek speak, they're just as real as this dimension. And so they were designed, created. There's many, many different types of Pure Lands. The most famous one's called Dewa Chen or Sukhavati.
Mhm.
And this is a place that was really created for individuals like us by great Buddhas with my languaging with the easiest visa access. In other words, it doesn't take a lot to like so to speak physically transfer your awareness after death. So they fit in. The Pure Land teachings fit in spectacularly with the larger rubric of the Bardo teachings,
Mhm.
so-called after-death teachings. What do you do after you die? And so for the vast majority of people, this is the best that one can do after one dies, is actually transition one's awareness, because you're going to move, according to these great wisdom traditions, awareness, consciousness, mind will be transitioned from one dimension to the next, whether we know it or not.
Which is really the key, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Because that's so important to know. How are we going to transition when we die? What's going to happen? How should we be prepared, right?
Exactly. So this is a fantastic way to prepare. It's with the practices, the instructions, the guidance, and the ways to implement strategies for getting there. And again, just inserting right away, we can get to a Thich Nhat Hanh calls the Pure Land of the present moment right away. But this is what makes this so great. It's like double dipping. This program is designed to help us enter the Pure Lands now through purifying our relationship to experience. And then as we transition at the end of life, then mind will naturally move towards a different dimension. Understanding Pure Land principles will help us guide the mind towards the very best, most auspicious rebirth.
So Andrew, you've been in the program at Drala Mountain Center that is, starting pretty soon, August 18th.
Yeah.
What exactly will people be doing to experience or for, the study
Yeah.
that you'll have? Like what are you going to do? And I'm sure with your ever characteristic humor and, you're such a scholar as well as a practitioner. So, what are you going to be doing that week?
Yeah. Well, it's going to be a kind of a three-pronged approach. I mean, I wouldn't say, well, I'd say at least for starters, you have to understand like what we're doing here. You have to understand what these Pure Lands are. The more you know about them, the more you believe it. I'll see it when I believe it. So there'll be some historical context. Where do these teachings come from? Again, why should one go there? This is a really important point. And so there'll be a little bit of doctrinal underpinning so we understand what these things are, how to go about them. And then there's a series of contemplations where we start to really ingest, digest, work with these materials, reflect on them using some investigations. And then really the most important thing, like I alluded to, Robbie, are the practices, the meditations. Working with official, formal Pure Land practices that are designed to help us move towards these realms after we transition at the end of this life. And then just as importantly, so there'll be these two parallel tracks. How do we move into these Pure Lands moment to moment to moment? And so this is a way to put our money where our mouth is, so to speak, where we can apply immediately to the present moment as well as to what happens at the end of life. And so there'll be discussion groups, there'll be a host of practices, both really short meditation sessions, really designed to enter the gate of the purity principle right now, as well as the more formal classical ways of working with these principles.
And that sounds really great, Andrew. And I hope I'm, able to come in as much as possible
Yeah, totally.
because other programs that I've done with you on the dream work, and I think you did a Pure Land program at Nalanda Bodhi at one time, and
Right.
I
Right.
remember
Yeah.
just learning so much from you again with your characteristic humor. And so in the dream work that I've done with you, you are able to share so much of your direct experience. And so how has the study of Pure Lands really impacted your practice, your way in relating to daily life?
Well, a couple things. I mean, one thing you just pinged on a little bit tangentially is also we're going to explore is there are very specific traditional ways in the tantric approach of Pure Land principles of working with our dream. So you mentioned a little bit about the dream work that I've done. This is one thing I neglected to say, working very specifically with the dream arena to work with Pure Land principles. And then the way it's affected me, it's really, and this is a big deal thing that we're going to be doing through I think it's like 12 step. How about that? I hadn't thought of that before. A 12-step program of purification through a very embodied practice where we're going to work specifically day by day, purifying our relationship to the contents of our experience. Now, this means both our affective, emotional experience, our felt experience, what we're feeling in our bodies, and basically any phenomenal arising. We'll be working through a step-by-step graded process of working with purifying our relationship. And as one does that, this is the way it's really helped me, Robbie, is that whenever I find myself, I mean, like, how often does this happen? Like irritated, annoyed, impatient. Through these principles that we'll be exploring, I realize, whoa, the reason I'm feeling this way is because it's actually an impure relationship to what's actually arising. And so, using some of the highest teachings of what's called Dzogchen or Mahamudra, literally the great perfection, you can also look at it as a great purity tradition, will be purifying. So, like for instance, I gave you just one quick example. So, like I live in an area where every once in a while we have low-flying aircraft, and they can be really quite irritating, right? And so, through this particular graded process, I realize that whenever I find a contracted situation, this is one of my big riffs these days, is working with the important um, kind of dance between expansion and contraction. And so if I have a contracted relationship to what's happening, which is almost my default, that is an impure relationship. That's a relationship that's highly referential. For instance, like, what does this have to do with me? Where do I fit in? If I have that relationship to the world, which if I look honestly is like, geez, I relate to everything that way. That's the basis of impurity. And so if I understand that, can't solve a problem you don't know you have, I can start to purify that relationship. So the plane flies overhead, I feel contracted, I feel irritated. Instead of capitulating to that and griping about it, I go, well, wait a second. I'm feeling this way because my relationship to this experience is impure. So this is a way, again, to enter the pure land of the present moment by realizing how we evict ourselves from the pure land of the present moment. And this is really the kind of the summit of the whole program. If we just open and relax into the nature of things, all the great non-dual wisdom traditions. So this is where the purity principle ties into the non-dual things. We're already in a pure land. So if that's really the case, and this is key, if it's really true, what do they say in the Gnostic tradition of Christianity, right? The kingdom of heaven is spread out across the world, but men, women do not see it. Well, if we really understand that, we really believe it, then it's like, well, wait a second, what am I doing? What's happening right now that's evicting me from this purity? What am I doing right now to kick myself out of the Pure Land? And so by working with this, you go, geez, well, maybe it's true. Maybe every time I contract, maybe every time I get distracted, I'm doing this little eviction thing. And so understanding that really leads to some fundamental transformations. And again, it has such universality and applicability in this age of so much divisiveness and contentious relationship. So that's the most immediate practical thing. And the reason I'm excited to share it is precisely for that reason. Because if you're not upset with what's happening in the world today, you don't know what's happening in the world today, right? And so if you can't respond from a more pure relationship, if your default is one of reactivity, then that's not particularly helpful to yourself or to the world. So if we can understand this, then you realize, whoa, these Pure Land principles, boy, do they apply to every relationship, everything that arises in my life.
Absolutely, Andrew. I mean, every day it's working with our habitual patterns, our tendencies that then where we're not able to see that things are pure. And
Exactly. Yeah,
and
exactly.
so I mean and for you to address this and work with it and practice with it in retreat would be so helpful for so many. I mean,
Yeah, I mean,
because I think it's a way people don't realize or recognize that these habitual tendencies, and so getting into it and then being able to experience the contrast in such
oh,
a way that you're introducing.
exactly. And then also understanding, like, well, why do we do this, right? What are the reasons for this habitual pattern? Why do we react in these impure ways? So if we understand these unconscious processes, then we can bring them into the light of consciousness. That in itself starts to purify that relationship. And then we can take more and more responsibility. We can see how it is that, like I mentioned earlier, we're constantly throwing ourselves out. And so by doing that, we can reverse that process. And so this ties in a little bit to some of the material I've been writing about and publishing on reverse meditations. They tie in here as well. That if we go directly into what we would consider a difficult, impure, challenging situation, well, we reverse our strategies, go directly into them. That's the first step of purification, reversing your strategy. So, like I hear the jet, go back to that. I feel myself contracted. I'm irritated. I'm realizing I'm not experiencing this thing purely. So what do I do then? I go directly into that
Yes.
annoyance. I go directly into it. This is classic alchemy. This is classic
Yes.
tantra. And
Yes.
then you flip it. And so this is one reason I'm so inspired right now because there's no shortage of grist for this mill, right? There's so many areas right now that are so challenging. We can really just vastly improve our relationship to what's going on in the world today.
So true, Andrew. And I'm excited about you coming to Drala Mountain Center. It's beautiful here right now.
Oh, I love that
And
place.
the weather. So why do this retreat at Drala Mountain Center? What do you like about doing it here?
Oh my gosh, I have such a heart connection there, right? I mean, the stupa world alone, right? So if anybody's
Right.
not been there, the Great Stupa of Dharmakaya, arguably the greatest Tibetan Buddhist uh, kind of sacred space in the Western world, certainly in America. And so that particular place, the stupa, represents these purity principles. So we'll be doing some stuff up there to soak in that kind of magic. And then because this is actually quite interesting, because so many amazing masters for so many years, decades at this point, have been on that sacred land. A little bit on the deeper esoteric side, but we'll be exploring this as well. They kind of perfume the land. They stamp the land with their pure awareness in the way they relate to the world. And so when you go up there, especially when you step inside the stupa, you may not be able to put it into words, but maybe I can help you put it into words. Why does this environment have this type of impact? Well, because there's a heightened level of purity in this environment. And so going back to Drala Mountain Center, where in fact the Dralas will be talking a lot about Drala principle. Drala literally means beyond the enemy. And so in our languaging here, you can say beyond the enemy of impurity. So it
Yes.
doesn't take much of a tweak of languaging to take all these great principles of the wisdom traditions, especially Buddhism and Tibetan Buddhism, and realize how these Pure Land principles, you go, oh, I never really thought about purity in that way. I never realized it had this applicability. And so that's kind of what I want to do is show people like, whoa, there's so much here and there's so much applicability.
Thank you, Andrew. And is there anything else you'd like to share about this program or any last comments?
You know,
Because
I, I
it's,
think just the opportunity for us to be together, the community. This can be a hybrid program, so there'll be people on land, and then we'll have our cyber community, our cyber sangha, and that in conjunction with the magic of the land itself just creates such an environment that is really, really conducive to working with these principles. And so it's one reason I keep coming back to Drala Mountain Center. It's really a magical, special place. So much happens there that's really quite beautiful. So yeah, I just can't wait. The applicability, the practicality, the universality of these principles. That's why I'm so psyched.
well, thank you, Andrew. And we're excited to have you here. And I haven't seen you in a long time. So
Yeah, I
looking,
can't wait to be back, Rob.
looking, looking forward to that.
Lovely,
So
lovely.
thank you so much.
I'll see you soon, and everybody else, come join us.
Thank you.
Cool. So now you have to make
Yeah,
sure
yeah, yeah.